It just takes a single event, one flash of high-stakes tension, and suddenly the entire calculus of a conflict can change. And that is exactly what just happened when news broke that a U.S. fighter jet had been shot down.
And then, these incredible images started to surface out of southern Iran. We're talking U.S. helicopters, flying daringly low, deep inside hostile territory. These look like stealth-modified Blackhawks on a search and rescue mission in broad daylight.
I mean, that is an extraordinarily dangerous move to make, so the question that hangs over everything else is, why would you take such a massive risk?
All right, so let's get into it. To understand this desperate rescue, we first have to go back to the event that kicked this whole thing off.
The news didn't come out all at once. It was shrouded in the fog of war. First, Iranian state media made the announcement. Then, a few hours later, Western and Israeli press started to corroborate it. And finally, U.S. officials admitted the loss to American news outlets.
And right away, a wave of conflicting information hits. Iran initially claimed it was a single-seat F-35, while the U.S. later confirmed it was a two-seat F-15E Strike Eagle. The Iranians even claimed the wreckage was a trap, deliberately set to lure in rescuers. The situation on the ground became incredibly tense. Iran put out a massive bounty for the pilot's capture, and while the U.S. pulled off that daring rescue of one crew member, the fate of the second is still unknown. For Iran, though, the images of that U.S. operation on their soil were a huge propaganda victory.
And that brings us to the first major consequence of this incident, the shattering of a foundational myth of modern warfare.
For decades, a core tenet of U.S. military doctrine, repeated endlessly by commentators, has been this simple idea. The United States has total and absolute air superiority.
And then, this happens. A sophisticated American fighter jet shot out of the sky over southern Iran. In a single moment, that absolute certainty just vanished.
Which leads to the second shockwave from this event, the surprising effectiveness of Iran's defenses. So how did this happen?
Well, this wasn't just some lucky shot. Sources indicate it's the result of a strategy Iran has been developing for nearly 50 years, asymmetric defensive warfare. Basically, they use their mountainous geography and homegrown tech specifically to counter a more powerful adversary. And they still have plenty of strength left. According to a recent U.S. intelligence assessment, even after weeks of airstrikes, Iran still has over half of its missile launchers intact, along with thousands of attack drones. On top of all that, Iranian officials are now claiming they're using a brand new, unidentified air defense system that proved to be devastatingly effective. This suggests their capabilities might be far greater than anyone previously understood.
This brings us to the third, and perhaps the most critical, consequence: the massive economic stakes now at the heart of the fight for the Strait of Hormuz. According to one report, that's the potential prize for Iran. Roughly $500 billion in revenue over 4 years, just by controlling the flow of shipping and oil through that narrow waterway.
And we know this economic angle is on the minds of leaders. After being briefed on the downing of the jet, former President Trump posted this on Truth Social, explicitly linking military action to taking the oil to make a fortune.
So when you combine this military setback, the surprising technology, and the massive economic prize, you get a very dangerous dynamic that analysts are calling the escalation trap.
And you can see how it works. It starts with U.S. airstrikes. Iran retaliates by downing a jet. That forces a risky U.S. ground rescue. Then come strikes on civilian targets, like an Iranian bridge, which in turn creates immense pressure for an even stronger Iranian response. Each step justifies the next, more dangerous one.
So how do you get out of this trap? Well, sources are talking about two very different paths. One is a diplomatic off-ramp, reconstruction aid in exchange for free passage. The other is the hardline military view. Take the reparations and seize total control of the strait.
And that leaves us with the ultimate, unresolved question. With the myth of air superiority shattered and the stakes higher than ever, what happens next? Escalation or diplomacy? The answer is going to shape the entire region.